When I was reading through your bio, I came across the piece where you believe that Rumi and Shamsi Tabriz were lovers, and it said a radical assertion. I'm not sure how radical that is. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that they were lovers, and I wonder if you could talk about that and how you think that, or how you feel about people thinking that that's really a radical assertion or perception on your part.
Well, it's strange actually, because I've changed my understanding of them a little, and I'd like to explain.
Okay.
I think they were completely interpenetrating, and that being completely interpenetrating at the level that they were goes beyond anything that can be ever incarnated, because it's a love of the soul so deep that you are already what you make love to someone to become. You're already one. And I know this kind of love because I have it for the Dalai Lama, and I have it from my great teacher, Father Bede Griffiths. And it's a love of adoration so deep, a love of tender worship so profound, a love of respect so absolute, that it melts you into the essential being of the other. It's a way in which hearts transmit ultimate knowledge to each other. It's the most sublime love, and I suspect that is what they really experienced, because that only a love at that transcendent height could ever have given birth to the astounding fountain of mystical understanding that Rumi gave to the world. Which doesn't mean that thinking that they were physical lovers is an absurd or obscene thing, because I think that kind of love would have embraced the possibility of physical passion, even if it negated it. It would have been open to everything. But I feel now not needing the physical expression. And I think that that's an even greater revelation of what's possible between men, because that opens it out to all kinds of men. And it's probably what men are truly seeking in each other, straight or gay, don't you think?
Well, I think we're seeking connection and
radical love. I think it's connection of the most radical kind. I think men have a very deep need for masculine love of the highest kind. I do, and I think that all men do, and this is one of the great revelations that's happening in our time, and I think it's great because I see a lot of young guys who are getting it, don't you?
Right. Well, I'm not sure if I see a lot of young guys getting it, but I'll tell you what's interesting from a sports level. And that's what happened recently with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, who all decided that they wanted to play together. You know, they all could have gone to different teams. I'm not thrilled about how LeBron James went about his process. I thought it was incredibly crass and commercial to the point where it almost turned me off completely of professional sports. But I will say that the choice that they made was to be with one another and to experience and play with one another, which is unique and heretofore has not been done in the realm of professional sports, where three guys have said, hey, let's do this together. We like doing this together. Let's hang out. Oh, we've lost him. We have lost our friend, Andrew. Let's find out who's on the line. I'm going to dial Andrew back in. Let's just see who's here. Hi, you're on with me, and we're going to give Andrew back in a moment. Who is this? Hello? Hello, you there? Going once, going twice. I'm going to hang up. I'll see you later. Let's see if we get Andrew back, and let's get him on his not-so-secret line that I wanted to do the cell phone here. 55693. Hold on. Wow, broke the spell for just a moment. Started talking about LeBron James. Look what happens. 6. All right. Here we go.
I am so sorry my phone went dead.
That's okay. I think the whole LeBron James thing broke the spell. Anyway,
No, it's wonderful. No, I heard bits of it, and I entirely agree. I think it was very interesting.
Yeah, and it's like it's a new paradigm. And I don't agree with their process, but I think that what they did was ultimately interesting because, I dabble with astrology, and I saw it as being a very different move. That was an Aquarian move. That was a synergistic group move, and it wasn't like I'm going to be the Piscean hero and save the day for my team or some other team that's going to be the highest bidder. I'm going to synergize my efforts with two other guys I really like, and we're going to do this together.
Wonderful.
I thought it was a kind of a breakthrough. Again, I don't like how he got there, but what comes out of this I think will be very interesting to witness. And
it's a wonderful way of looking at it. I think that's a very beautiful way of looking at it, and what a sign that is for how men may be able to relate in years to come, that this would be a much more joyful and sensuous and intelligent way of relating to each other, wouldn't it?
I think men, ultimately, and I think women as well, in their own way, men and women, we need to be seen and we need to be recognized. And I think in the same sex, it's pretty vital, especially for men.
Very much so.
Through so much wounding for so many years. And I, again, playing with the astrological timetable, we're about to enter Saturn in Libra. And I really think that that's going to augur a more balanced relationship, both with our own, as males, our own inner masculine and feminine, and for females, vice versa. And I think we're going to be able to round off this foray into feminism and metrosexuality. And I think we have an opportunity to really begin to understand and relate to one another as whole beings and claiming those masculine parts that we've tossed away in order to be sensitive and to be loved,
I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that as a time that's coming, and I'm really hoping, Andrew, that this feeds into this act of sacred activism, because now we can enter into those spaces from much more whole places inside of ourselves.
Oh, good. I agree with you. God, yes. I think the great sexual healing that's happening on every level is very important, and I think that the real truth of the marriage of the mother and the father within the one is enacted in a sacred androgyny, the kind of marriage of the masculine and the feminine that takes place in both men and women, and that both sexes are going through this revolution, and we're having very powerful, very feminine women appearing and very sensitive, very powerful men appearing. And this is wonderful because it means that there's the defamations of feminism or all of the rubbish that only places one emphasis is that now the marriage is appearing. It's here. We're seeing how beautiful it is.
Yeah. Can you mentioned something about the Dalai Lama a few moments ago, and I've been thinking for a while now about pacifism in Buddhism and pacifism in Christianity, and how there is, on the one hand, a really wonderful component to turning the other cheek, forgiveness, compassion, loving thy neighbor, and from the Buddhist perspective, compassion and detachment, and all of these things are wonderful. But I feel like, in a lot of respects, that they have been violated and played upon and manipulated by forces that understand these components to these various belief systems. And I've been trying to reconcile in my own life the relationship to that kind of, for lack of a better term, forgiveness and surrender, with a more active and a more like, hey, fuck that, this doesn't play, and we're not going to take it anymore. There's a real balance in there for me with those belief systems and kind of where we're headed now with BP, where it's like, no, we're not going to take this anymore. Can you talk about that and how you think that those two belief systems have been played out to this point in time, and where we go moving forward with that?
Well, maybe I think that the passive surrender can turn into weakness in the end in the face of a really ruthless enemy. I think Gandhi's... Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
I think Gandhi was able to do what he did because fundamentally he was up against a pretty ruthless imperial class in England, but one that actually still believed in its own law. So there was something decent in the British soul for all of its imperial lunacy that could be appealed to. But this is certainly not the case in China. The Dalai Lama told me when I interviewed him in Oslo at the time he got the Nobel Prize, that although he was a committed pacifist in many, many ways, he also was a committed pacifist because if anybody started rebelling in Tibet, the Chinese would use it as an excuse for even deeper genocide. So he was facing a completely different kind of opponent, far more psychotic and out of control, even than the British. And so his hands at the deepest level was tied because he was having to negotiate with people who were morally and spiritually infected by a psychosis that was rendering them crazy. So at a very deep level, he has been consciously sitting down with great compassion with people whom he knows are caught in a psychosis which is potentially terribly destructive to his own people and terribly destructive to themselves.
What did you think of the peace flotilla? Did you think that that was a good example of sacred activism?
What was it? What did you say?
The peace flotilla, when they brought the ships in from Turkey off the coast of Israel, and they wanted to bring aid to the Palestinians, and they got raided.
Well, I think it was an extremely brave act. I think it was a very provocative act, and it risked a great deal, but I think it was a very brave act, and I am not a convinced and complete pacifist, I have to say. I am a paradoxical kind of pacifist. I think everybody should be trained in nonviolent behavior and in nonviolent action so as to gain all the skills of nonviolent communication and deep shadow work and everything. But I also think that they are the only people who could ever commit what you could call enlightened violence, a violence prompted not by hatred and not by desire to kill, but by a desire to defend things that have to survive. And it could happen in human history that we have to fight. After all, if Churchill had just said, okay, let's just embrace the Hitler hordes and make a deal, we keep the empire, they have whatever they want, we'd be fine. Well, the world would have been plunged into a Nazi night, which could have ended every possibility of the birth of civilization. Those possibilities are here now. I think one of the most dangerous aspects of our crisis is that there's quite clearly two versions of unity running for the finishing post. One is the kind of radical unity of the whole human family through a disaster in a divine process which leads to justice and balance and harmony. That's the unity of the birth. The other is a unity of the corporate military-industrial complex with massive media power to use fear and trivialize everything, coupled with enormous nuclear power, coupled with enormous financial power on every level.
Right.
So that could get pretty fascist if the conditions were right. So we really have to work hard to wake people up to the danger.
You know,
it's already tried to take over the country during the Bush administration. I mean, they behaved like fascist gangsters and they raped the Constitution in full view of everybody while keeping a media campaign of fear to keep people so intimidated that they sacrificed their conscience.